I have zero faith that this is anything other than a ploy to hoodwink the Western press. And then, like they said, if Hamas doesn't agree, putting in poison pills or changing the terms or shifting in rhetoric to, of course, inspire Hamas to reject any sort of deal, but that gives them a permission structure in the eyes of Western leaders to finish the job.
Today is a historic day for peace.
I support your plan to end the war in Gaza, which achieves our war aims.
I also want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for agreeing to the plan and for trusting that if we work together, we can bring an end to the death and destruction that we've seen for so many years, decades, even centuries, and begin a new chapter of security, peace, and prosperity for the entire region.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has allegedly accepted the outline of Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan to end the war in Gaza that would immediately end the fighting, force the release of hostages within 72 hours, and create what Trump has dubbed a board of peace. But now the question is whether or not this plan is real or if it will once again be scuttled. So what's in the plan? If both sides agree to this proposal, the war will immediately end. Israeli forces will withdraw to the agreed upon line to prepare for a hostage release. During this time, all military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment, will be suspended and battle lines will remain frozen until conditions are met for the complete staged withdrawal. Within 72 hours of the agreement being settled, all hostages, alive and deceased, will be returned. Once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and to decommission their weapons will be given amnesty. Members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage to receiving countries.
Before we get to what happens to Gaza, I want to take this step by step. So I'm gonna put two huge question marks here. There's more question marks to come as to whether this is real or not. And by the way, if it is real and then we actually do end the war, I'll be ecstatic. But if it's a trick, we'll talk more about what it would mean to be a trick. But first here, within 72 hours of the agreement, all hostages will be returned. Remember, Israel violates every ceasefire. So far in these 2 years, they've never once followed a ceasefire. They'll follow it for a couple of days, and then after they get their hostages back, they immediately go back to bombing. They go, oh yeah, there was a Hamas dude that looked at us kind of funny, we think maybe, and we're back to killing, right? So if they get all their hostages back within 3 days, Hamas has no leverage anymore, and Israel can go back to violating it with some excuse. So that's a potential problem. We hope that doesn't happen. Number two is, I don't want to gloss over that they're going to decommission their weapons and will be given amnesty and escorted from Gaza, the Hamas members theoretically. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later again after Jordan gives you more of the details of the deal. But is anybody really going to do that? Like members of Hamas are going to walk out in public with a weapon, already they'd be killed instantly. But okay, let's say that this fantasy happens. And they go, okay, Israel, I submit to you. Here is my weapon, I turn it in. And now I will head to a different country where I'm sure you won't send in people to kill me, even though you send in people to kill people in every country. Not literally every country, but certainly any country you like, right? And the White House today complaining about how Netanyahu has bombed and invaded almost all of his neighbors. So that portion, I don't think it's gonna happen for a single person. Like that's just saying to Israel, come kill me, either right now or a couple of months or a couple of years later. So if that's like a central requirement of the deal, oh boy, right? Because it's just totally unrealistic. And by the way, you could want every Hamas fighter to come in and hand in their weapons and to get killed or not to get killed and have safe haven, whatever. You could want that. The question is what's actually going to happen. So I'm very worried about that stage. Sorry to interrupt, Jordan. So tell us more about the rest of it.
I think the question then is what happens to Gaza, right? And the plan calls for Gaza to be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza, which of course raises a lot of questions. And it also says Gaza will be governed under the temporary transitional governance of a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee responsible for delivering the day-to-day running of public services and municipalities for the people of Gaza. This committee will be made up of qualified Palestinians and international experts with oversight and supervision by a new international transitional body, the Board of Peace, which will be headed and chaired by President Donald J. Trump, with other members and heads of state to be announced, including former Prime Minister Tony Blair. It calls on the Palestinian Authority to complete a reform program and eventually take control back of Gaza. The plan explicitly says no one will be forced to leave Gaza, and those who want to leave will be free to do so and free to return. So it's a matter of trust there. It also says Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza. Then the question, of course, is will Hamas agree to these terms presented to them by Trump and Netanyahu? So far, Hamas hasn't signed on to this plan. In fact, they hadn't even been presented with this plan until hours after Trump's announcement. A senior Hamas official did tell the BBC that Hamas remained open to studying any proposal that could end the war in Gaza, but stressed that any agreement must safeguard Palestinian interests, ensure a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, and bring the war to an end. But the issue of total demilitarization is a sticking point. Asked about the group's weapons, the official said, "The weapons of the resistance are a red line as long as the occupation continues. The issue of arms can only be discussed within the framework of a political solution that guarantees the establishment of an independent Palestinian state on the 1967 borders." During their joint press conference, Netanyahu addressed what would happen if they refuse Trump's plan. Take a look.
If Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way, but it will be done.
If Hamas rejects the deal, which is always possible, they're the only one left. Everyone else has accepted it. But I have a feeling that we're going to have a positive answer. But if not, as you know, Bibi, you'd have our full backing to do what you would have to do.
In reality, there's a whole lot of skepticism about whether Israel itself will stick to the plan. Haaretz reporter Amir Tiban wrote on X after the deal was announced, Netanyahu will face enormous pressure from within his coalition in the next day to thwart the plan, to toughen its conditions, and to convince Hamas that it's a conspiracy. In parallel, there will be briefings by commentators on behalf of Netanyahu. Surely Amit Siegel has already started on how the agreement actually allows Israel to continue fighting Hamas, and the withdrawal will never happen, and the perimeter will be annexed, and so on. These are the same tactics we've seen throughout the past year in all rounds of negotiations, and they will be employed this time in an especially strong manner. The story is far from over. And prior to Netanyahu allegedly agreeing to this plan today, White House advisors privately admitted that Israel was the one holding it up. One Trump advisor involved in the plan said, the Arabs have agreed to it like 100%. Now we're waiting for the president to work his magic on Netanyahu. Another official familiar with the peace talks said, everyone, and I mean everyone, is exasperated with Bibi. Cenk, it seems like a lot of question marks. It seems like there's going to be pressure from within Netanyahu's own coalition, and some of these terms as presented to Hamas officials might not be mutually agreeable. How do you expect this will go in the coming days?
Okay, so let's break down one by one to answer that question. So Tony Blair is a big part of this. Oh boy, Tony Blair historically will do anything Israel commands of him, including starting the Iraq War, along with Bush and Cheney. And then they say that they will not annex Gaza. Okay, that sounds great. So if it's a good peace deal, guys, oh my God, and the Arab nations accept it, and the Palestinians accept it, I'll accept it with bells on, right? So we're desperate to get to peace. So of course, again, the question is it a trick or not? So then you get to, well, you're leaving Gaza. Well, that's beautiful. It's critical, obviously. But then they talk about, well, I mean, obviously there's a security perimeter that we need. No, not at all obvious. So if that's like a cheesy way of keeping a half, a quarter, a third of Gaza, then that's not a real peace deal. That's saying, yeah, I came in, I slaughtered you guys, I took a bunch of your land, and I'm never going to leave. So the devil's in the details. What do they mean by it? And then of course, will they stick with it? Number 2 or 3, they say safe passage back and forth for the Palestinians. They can leave and they can come back. Again, that's one of the things we're gonna have to see to believe, because the Israelis have been trying to push them out of Gaza. So if they leave Gaza, they might not be able to return, because part of the point of this exercise for the Israelis was to take Gaza. So now they ran into a lot of trouble, and here in America, all across the world, and that is why the deal might be real, because the Israelis are beginning to understand they're isolated by the world, and Netanyahu has got the entire world to despise Israel. So that is not in any way, shape, or form a good thing for Israel. When you do a genocide in front of the whole world and you rub the world's face in it, we have the power to do a genocide and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, that hurts Israel, because it makes everybody dislike them and not want to work with them, etc. Now, unfortunately, a lot of folks, certainly within the Israeli government, have lost their minds. They're detached from reality. They're genocidal freaks. So they see that and they go, oh, we know it. They all hate Jews. That's why they won't let us murder Palestinian children. It has nothing to do with the children. Who cares about them? They're subhuman, right? It must be because they irrationally hate us, right? So, a lot of, unfortunately, Israeli supporters are just that detached and ludicrous. So how do you appeal to that guy? Which then leads us to another problem. So especially the most ludicrous, the most insane people are in Israel's cabinet. They're probably the most detached from reality on the whole planet. So they think they're the victims as they're committing a genocide. It's absurd. It's total insanity. Anyway, that cabinet then is now going to try to undermine this deal in every way, because they have said very clearly, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, and other cabinet members, no, we want greater Israel. We want Gaza, we want the West Bank, Western Syria, and southern Lebanon, and it goes on and on. It goes all the way, that map goes all the way to Turkey, Saudi Arabia. So they are very clear, and they have also said we want to annihilate Gaza. That's our goal. So they feel like, oh, we only murdered 65,000 at least. And we only murdered 20,000 kids. We only wounded 166,000 people. We only leveled the entire place. Not good enough, not good enough. We wanted to slaughter them all. So they're gonna be very angry, and they're gonna look to undermine this deal, especially if it's a real deal. Now, by the way, that's one of the things we'll be looking for. If they're not angry, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, then this deal is not real at all. If they're snickering, going, oh yeah, we'd love for Hamas to take that deal. It's a really good deal where we're going to leave Gaza, right? No, that means you're screwed. It's totally fake. Once they get the hostages back, they're back to the slaughterhouse, right? But if they're furious about it, that's a good sign, because that might mean that it's real. All right, and so look, issues of statehood, they say that you would put it on a track. God knows how long that track will take. Statehood is absolutely necessary. Full withdrawal is absolutely necessary. If we wound up with 1967 borders, oh my God, ecstatic. And remember, that means Israel keeps Israel proper. There's safe haven for Jews. All the things they said they've wanted, they just don't get greater Israel, right? They give that back. Again, would be miraculous. This current Israeli government would never do that. Uproot the settlers from the West Bank, and so that's another long story. So now, guys, the thing that two things I'm most worried about was, you saw that giant asterisk Netanyahu put on there in that video. Like, now if Hamas, winds up violating this deal in any way, shape, or form, well, then of course it's off, and we're gonna have to do it the hard way, where we continue to kill them and take their land. Well, I mean, if that's up to Netanyahu, he's gonna say them breathing violates the deal. So you could drive a Mack truck through that loophole. I'm super worried about that. And then finally, Israel does this trick all the time. They've offered one good peace deal. Ehud Olmert did in 2008. Okay, outside of that, they'll offer total junk, right? Like, oh, we keep this, you guys have no rights, you'll never get a military, you'll never be an independent state. I mean, you'll be independent, but you really live under our boot, okay? And okay, oh, we offered you a peace deal, you didn't take it, that's it, we're taking more land, we're killing more children, we're going kill, take. Oh, we offered you a peace plan, right? And then they'll get American propaganda outlets, some of the media, the politicians, all to go, yes, Israel has they're so holy and moral. The Palestinians made them, occupied them for 58 years. They made them kill their children. The poor Israelis are such victims. They wanted a peace, they just couldn't get to it. And they wound up taking more and more land. Golly gee, they didn't want to. So that's like the oldest Israeli trick in the book. If this is that, then it's a disaster. And if this is that, Jordan, I don't think that Israel gets it. If this is a trick, and they think that they're going to be able to trick the left wing and the right wing in America and get back to us all complying with Israel's orders, then they've got a rude awakening coming for them. But I hope it doesn't go in that direction. I hope Trump is right. The Arab nations are on board and it's real, and it actually does most of the things that it says. Then we'd all be thrilled.
Yeah, I think it is a miracle that there is even an avenue and a possibility for any sort of agreement when you consider that Israel has on multiple occasions killed negotiators involved in any sort of peace talks. In 2024, the strike in Tehran killed one of the chief negotiators, and just 3 weeks ago in Qatar, Cenk, they killed another, the lead negotiator. That they are even considering a deal is a miracle. And that I have zero faith based on Israel's actions, Netanyahu's leadership over the past couple of years, and the genocide that they are committing right now. I have zero faith that this is anything other than a ploy to hoodwink the Western press. And then, like they said, if Hamas doesn't agree, putting in poison pills or changing the terms or shifting in rhetoric to, of course, inspire Hamas to reject any sort of deal, but that gives them a permission structure in the eyes of Western leaders to finish the job. I hope with you, I hope it doesn't turn out like that, but I feel like that is inevitable based on Netanyahu's bloodlust.
Yeah, so the last two things on it. So Art Guy, one of our members on TYT.com, wrote in with a good point. Just like Putin, Bibi wants to give the impression of wanting peace without ever going through with it. And so, of course, that's what we're all worried about. And it's, like I said, a tired old trick of the Israelis at large, and then specifically with Netanyahu in this 2-year conflict. Like Jordan pointed out, not only never actually follows through on anything he's promised, ever, the world's biggest liar, easily by a lot, right? And that includes like Trump officials, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, according to Axios, saying it's unbelievable how duplicitous he is. Like even super hardcore pro-Israeli folks inside the Trump administration loathe Netanyahu because he's such a disgusting liar. He never means it, right? So they're also on pins and needles. So like he said yes to what is theoretically Trump's deal. Does he mean it? Or is he going to not only betray the Palestinians, but betray America? And as soon as he gets his hostages back, go back to a slaughterhouse. So if that happens, again, I think that Netanyahu will be in for a rude awakening. But that leads to my tiny bit of optimism here, Jordan. And I'm so afraid to say that because there's been so many fake peace offers by the Israelis, which is that if the Arab nations say yes, and they are the ones that are going to bring in the forces to run Gaza in the meanwhile, and this is another big if there's no nonsense about a security perimeter where they take a big chunk of Gaza and they actually do leave Gaza, okay, then that's real, and I would be very happy with that. So like the propagandists on the other side will say like, oh no, you guys support Hamas. They say that about everyone who criticizes Israel 1 inch, right? And you guys would love them to run Gaza. When of course that's nonsense. Nobody on this side wants Hamas to run Gaza, right? If the Arab countries say Israel's not gonna run Gaza and neither is Hamas, we're gonna have a neutral force that actually, is fair. Oh, parties everywhere, like jubilation. So, and the only reason, so this is the ray of hope. The only reason why I think it might be possible now is because Israel has become so deeply unpopular everywhere, including America, for the first time ever in my lifetime. They now are under 50% for Americans saying we should continue, that it is in America's interest to continue to support Israel. So that means there's an enormous chunk of Americans now, both left, right, middle, saying Israel's not in our interest at all. Why don't they, get out of here? I don't want to give them any more money. And I don't know why we think that it's in our interest to alienate 1.6 billion Muslims and make them our enemies so that Israel can get more land and slaughter more people. Not in our interest. So now that the American people have begun to wake up, Israel's in a slight panic. Like, oh my God, they're finding out, they're finding out. We got to get out of the room before they find out that we took $310 billion off of them. They've created all these wars for us to fight, that they've created all these enemies for us, etc. So you see what I'm saying, Jordan? Like, I don't know if there's guys like Dermer who are not any morally better than Netanyahu, but are at least smarter and realize it's time to get the hell out of the room before they get caught. That's my sliver of hope.
Maybe you have more optimism than I do, I suppose, but I'm with you. I hope that there is some sort of positive outcome here. Based on the voices around Netanyahu, the pressure he will face in his own cabinet, in his own country, in his government. Of course, there are people like that. Maybe they see the writing on the wall, but it just seems like they are using this to provide cover and give them justification for a complete and total takeover. And I just feel like the promise from Trump last week of he's not going to let Netanyahu annex the West Bank, that feels like that's all on the table too, because the Western media and the legacy press here certainly wouldn't care. They would allow it to happen. They would use this. They haven't been able to distinguish that these are two different parts of Palestine. Like you see so much of this just being wrapped up into October 7th language when the West Bank had nothing to do with it. So I feel like if that was their next move or they did this concurrently, there wouldn't be a sufficient distinguishing point in Western media to highlight just how wrong that also is.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just back that up real quick. So the Israelis are taking corridor E1 in West Bank, which separates the West Bank into two different parts and makes it nearly unrulable for the Palestinians. So people are worried that that is de facto annexation, the beginning of de facto annexation, right? And so and America has not objected at all. So this idea that, we're not gonna let them take the West Bank, but also notice what Jordan is saying. Wait a minute, what does the West Bank have to do with Hamas? Hamas is not in the West Bank. So, and now we're having a debate about whether to allow Israel to annex the West Bank, which has nothing to do with Hamas and would be deeply illegal and would certainly lead to war. They're like, well, now we're debating it. Why are we debating it? And that goes to the other point that Jordan made. Western media is disgusting. They're total propagandists for the Israelis. So did you hear about E1 from anyone in mainstream news? No, of course not. Maybe New York Times or Washington Post might have written an article, but on cable news, nothing. Did you and if you said to them, hey, look, these Israelis look like they want to annex the West Bank, they're having a legitimate debate about it, and we think that's terrible, they're like, anti-Semite, how dare you? It's your fault. You're the one who hates Jews. They get to do whatever they want, and if you ever criticize them, we're gonna ruin your career by calling you an anti-Semite. That's the job of Western media at large, period. That's all they ever do. They never significantly criticize Israel. They're all afraid for their jobs. They all work for, basically, in essence, for Israel. As we're going to explain later in the program, it's going to be very literal soon when Larry Ellison buys half of American media and hands it over to Israeli control. So you're not going to ever get the truth from Western media. You will always get a massively pro-Israel bias that is the equivalent of propaganda for a different government. And then if you object and go, that's not objective. That's the least objective thing that anybody's ever seen. The whole world agrees you are not objective. The whole world thinks you're doing Israeli propaganda. They'll go, anti-Semite, fire him, fire him, fire him. Don't let anybody say anything against Israel. By the way, we're objective. So if you're looking for a fair and real and honest analysis of this peace deal, do not turn to mainstream media. They will definitely lie to you on behalf of Israel. So we're going to keep covering it. We'll see how the Arab nations react. We'll see if it has any degree of legitimacy. And remember, guys, super last thing on this for now is, even if it's genuine and they start, there are forces inside Israel, which is the majority of their cabinet, the majority of their government, that will try to undermine it even if it's real. And they'll work like overtime, and they will use all of their goons in American media and American politics to undermine a peace deal so they can go back to war, back to murdering Palestinians, back to stealing their land. So that's the drama that's going to play out here. To actually land, if it's real, to actually land this bird will be a minor miracle, but let's all root for it, hope that it's real, and hope that they can actually execute it.